This is Group 7's video presentation of our hypothetical client Jessica's diagnostic report, individual treatment plan, and lesson plan. The members in our group are Anna Claire Wright, Sarah Krebs, Drew Weber, Sarah Katherine Crispell, and Kaela Howard. Our client is a 10-year, 3-month-old girl named Jessica who is in 4th grade. She has a working diagnosis of specific language impairment and dyslexia, and her major problem areas are both receptive and expressive language as well as literacy skills. Her specific problem areas, as reported by her parents, are as follows. She is struggling to keep up with her classmates in terms of academic achievement. She has deficient oral language skills that are characterized by immature grammar, which immediately sets her apart in conversation from her same-age peers. She omits grammatical morphemes that are obligatory in the contexts used. For example, although Jessica speaks with a standard American English dialect, both at home and at school, she often omits third-person singular verb forms, as in, Lester walk to school, but Henry ride the bus. Her ability to follow multi-step directions, which is a skill that is essential for successful completion of classroom tasks, is well below grade level expectations, perhaps indicating a concomitant comprehension problem. In terms of her reading and writing skills, she reads at a 2nd grade level and demonstrates problems with decoding, reading comprehension, and spelling. According to Jessica's mother, her daughter enjoys attending school despite the child's awareness that she is struggling academically, and her strengths are as follows. She excels in both art class and physical education activities. She enjoys interacting with her friends, and she is a fun-loving and social child. Jessica has a long history of therapy and special services, including speech and language therapy both through school and through a private clinic, an early intervention home program, reading support at school, and after-school tutoring. In spite of the many years of therapy and other supports that Jessica has received, her problems with language literacy learning have continued to persist. This, along with the fact that Jessica's language problems have transcended oral language understanding and production to reading and writing, are Jessica's mother's chief concerns and the primary reasons for referral. In order to better describe Jessica's speech and language understanding and performance, as well as investigate some of the underlying competencies that support that performance, several standardized tests and 2 non-standardized tools were employed. The general conclusions that can be drawn from the results of the assessments administered are as follows. Jessica does indeed have a significant delay in both age-expected receptive and expressive language competencies, in the absence of any obvious cognitive deficit, peripheral hearing loss, social-emotional difficulties, or oral motor problems. A working diagnosis of SLI was supported, given the absence of any disqualifying etiological factor and the presence of multiple areas of language learning that were below age expectations, as well as her long history of problems with speech and language learning. Speech sound errors were discerned through testing and observation, but they did not negatively affect Jessica's intelligibility. Long-standing problems with the speech sound system may indicate a problem with phonological memory that can impact new word learning and word retrieval. The problems with the phonological processing component of language learning also would contribute to a diagnosis of dyslexia.
During the spring 2020 semester, Jessica attended the WKU Communication Disorders Clinic for assessment. She was administered the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test 4th edition, the Comprehensive Test of Phonological Processing for ages 7 through 24, the Test of Narrative Language, from which she was also asked to write a story from Task 4, the Test of Auditory Comprehension of Language 3rd edition, the Comprehensive Assessment of Spoken Language for ages 7 to 21, and a hearing evaluation which revealed that hearing thresholds are within normal limits. A 100 utterance language sample was also collected. Jessica has a significant delay in both age-expected receptive and expressive language competencies. She qualifies for speech and language services at her elementary school where she is in the 4th grade, and an IEP should be made. She will attend the Western Kentucky University Communication Disorders Clinic twice weekly for 45-minute sessions during the fall 2020 semester to improve her receptive and expressive language skills as well as her literacy skills. There will be 4 goals for the treatment plan over the course of the semester, addressing receptive language, expressive language, literacy skills, and family education. The first goal states that Jessica will improve her receptive skills to a more age-appropriate level in order to functionally communicate with adults and peers by meeting 2 objectives over 3 consecutive sessions. First, Jessica will increase her understanding of age-appropriate receptive vocabulary by identifying common objects when named with minimal cueing and a structured activity with 80% accuracy, with an established baseline of 50% accuracy. Second, after Jessica is given 2-step oral directions, she will follow each direction with 100% accuracy in 3 out of 5 trials with an established baseline of 100% accuracy in 1 out of 5 trials. The second goal states that Jessica will improve her expressive language skills to a more age-appropriate level in order to functionally communicate with adults and peers by meeting 2 objectives over 3 consecutive sessions. The first objective states that Jessica will use picture cards representing nouns and verbs to tactilely form simple subject-verb-object sentences and will vocalize them using the correct third-person singular verb form with 100% accuracy and 4 out of 5 opportunities with an established baseline of 100% accuracy and 1 out of 5 opportunities. The second objective states that Jessica will retell a story she has just read aloud with the development of a clear problem and solution and a logical beginning, middle, and end, using moderate visual, fading to verbal cues in 2 out of 3 opportunities with an established baseline of retelling a story appropriately in 0 out of 3 opportunities. The third goal states Jessica will improve her literacy skills to a more age-appropriate level by meeting 2 objectives over 3 consecutive sessions. The first objective states that after reading a short passage, Jessica will correctly answer 12 out of 15 comprehension questions beginning with why, with minimal verbal cueing and an established baseline of 6 out of 15 why comprehension questions answered correctly. The second objective states that Jessica will correctly spell 15 out of 20 age-appropriate vocabulary words with minimal verbal cueing in 2 out of 3 opportunities, with an established 8 out of 20 age-appropriate vocabulary words spelled correctly in 2 out of 3 opportunities. The fourth goal states that the clinician will provide a minimum of 5 educational resources to the family during the semester. The clinician will send home 2 informational packages about SLI that include at-home learning activities over the course of the semester. The clinician will send home a self-monitoring sheet to promote continued work towards the goals outside the speech room. And lastly, the clinician will supply and send home 3 educational brochures about dyslexia that are consistent with the client's improvement over the course of the semester.
Here is the lesson plan we created for one session with Jessica. As you can see, we have planned our activities for the first session we will meet with the client as indicated by the number 1 written next to plan number. We have chosen to target 3 of our 4 goals within this one session, with the first 2 goals being Goal 1 and Goal 3, which focus on the improvement of Jessica's receptive language skills and literacy skills, respectively. The third and final goal we will target is Goal 4, which focuses on providing parent and family education about Jessica's diagnoses. In this brief overview of the lesson plan, I will focus only on which objectives we've chosen, what procedures we will utilize in therapy when completing these objectives, and the criterion for mastery for each objective, as Sarah, Katherine, and Sarah will give a more in-depth description of the materials and activities we will use to complete each objective later on in the presentation. Because this is the first session we will be meeting with Jessica, our first objective is for the clinician to build rapport with the client and the client's family. Rapport should be fostered early in the therapy session so that trust can be built between the client and clinician, making it easier for the more important therapy goals to be accomplished later on. To do this, the clinician will perform an information-getting interview as well as an interview with the client, which will consist of a get-to-know-you activity for the client and clinician to become better acquainted with one another. Because this is not an objective for Jessica to master, but for the therapist to complete, the criterion for mastery is simply completion. Again, because this is the first session, the next 3 objectives we've come up with should be completed without any instruction beforehand, as the goal of this session is to get an idea of Jessica's current skill level by way of establishing a baseline for each task. Our second objective is for Jessica to identify pictures of common activities when named. We will do this by way of a structured activity in which the clinician will provide verbal prompts and cues by naming the activities represented by pictures on a worksheet, and will provide visual prompts and cues through the actual pictures on the worksheet themselves. The worksheet used for this activity will have 12 pictures on it, so to establish our baseline, we will record how many of these 12 pictures Jessica was able to identify correctly here on our data collection sheet. In the sessions that follow, the criterion for mastery for this activity will be 80% accuracy. Our third objective on our lesson plan is for Jessica to follow 2- and 3-step directions presented verbally by the clinician. We will do this by way of a structured activity in which the clinician will provide verbal prompts and cues by reading the multi-step directions aloud, and will provide visual prompts and cues through a first-then board and relevant worksheets. For 5 trials, the clinician will read 6 sets of multi-step directions aloud to Jessica, and to establish a baseline, the clinician will record how many directions Jessica is able to follow correctly within each trial here on our data collection sheet. In the sessions that follow, the criterion for mastery will be 100% accuracy in 3 out of 5 trials. Our fourth objective on our lesson plan is for Jessica to answer why comprehension questions after reading a short passage. We will do this through a structured activity in which the clinician will provide verbal prompts and cues by helping Jessica with the reading passage, and will provide visual prompts and cues through the physical copy of the reading passage itself, as well as through a color-coded question worksheet. To establish a baseline, we will record how many of the 10 why comprehension questions that Jessica is able to answer correctly here on our data collection sheet. In the sessions that follow, the criterion for mastery will be 8 out of 10 comprehension questions answered correctly. Our fifth and final objective on our lesson plan is for the clinician to provide Jessica's mother with one of the 3 educational brochures about dyslexia that will be provided to her over the course of this semester. The clinician will provide Jessica's mother with this information once the session is over, and will give a brief overview of what the informational packet contains. Because this is not an objective for Jessica to master, but for the therapist to complete, the criterion for mastery is simply completion.
For Objective 1.0, as the clinician, I would build rapport with Jessica and her caregivers. To do this, I would hold an information-getting interview with the caregiver just to ask them follow-up questions after receiving the filled-out case history form. I would also give the caregivers a clinician-generated bio handout. To establish rapport with Jessica, I would set up a get-to-know-you activity with her. For this get-to-know-you activity, I would put together a bag of my favorite things and present them to her. I would then ask her to tell me what her favorite things are. For Objective 1.1, Jessica will increase her understanding of age-appropriate receptive vocabulary by identifying common activities when named with minimal cueing in a structured activity with 80% accuracy. In order to do this, as the clinician, I would have Jessica participate in this vocabulary activity. I would ask her to identify each item or action as I name them. For example, Jessica, show me the girl hanging the picture frame, and she would then point to the girl holding the picture frame, and she would have to get 80% of these correct.
Objective 1.2 states that after being given multi-step oral directions, Jessica will follow each step with 100% accuracy in 3 out of 5 trials. Jessica's diagnostic report reads that she is well below grade level expectations for following multi-step directions, and this is affecting her ability to successfully complete homework tasks. Group 7 decided that we would address this objective with the listening ladybug activity. Since Jessica enjoys art class, we thought we would use coloring as a motivator. Each of these little ladybug cards has 2 to 3 step directions for how to complete this coloring sheet. Jessica would select one of the cards and the clinician would read it to her, like so. Color the oval border green. Write a number 6 on the ribbon and draw an X above the balloon. Another example is color the balloon orange, color the girl's ribbon purple, and write your name on the top of the page. The clinician would encourage Jessica to take her time and focus on completing each step to these 2 to 3 step directions. It is common for children with language disorders to miss certain steps or to mix up the ordering. So this activity would help us determine if there are any consistencies as to which part or parts to the directions Jessica is prone to miss. After this activity, we would present Jessica with a first-then board. This would be the more functional component to the objective of following multi-step directions. This first-then board is laminated, so Jessica's teachers and/or caregivers can use an expo marker to easily write on and erase different directions throughout the school day or at home. We would want Jessica to practice using this board, so we have before and after sentences about school that she can practice with. Number 9 reads, before you read the social studies chapter, jot down 3 things you want to know. So the clinician would help Jessica fill out, under the first section, 3 things I want to know. And then under then, she would write, read my social studies chapter. At the end of the session, the clinician would go over this first then board with the caregiver and also contact the teacher about how to use it and encourage generalization. Objective 3.1 states that after reading a short passage, Jessica will correctly answer 8 out of 10 comprehension questions beginning with why with minimal verbal cueing. Jessica's test of narrative language reports that her ability to accurately answer narrative comprehension questions revealed consistent problems with inferencing. My group decided that we would begin working on Jessica's literacy skills by giving her little note card reminders for the WH questions. These note cards have bullet points that provide her with scenarios where she would use each of the WH questions. Since we are specifically working on why during this session to encourage language output, we would remind Jessica that why question answers typically begin with because and provide a reason as to why a certain event took place. We would then encourage Jessica to read the passage and answer 10 why questions. We have a copy of a words read incorrectly sheet for the clinician to use while Jessica is reading. It is important that the SLP keeps this sheet hidden from Jessica so as to not discourage her or make her self-conscious. According to the diagnostic report, Jessica was not easy to engage in conversation, so her language sample was pieced together from incidental language throughout the testing session. For this reason, we thought it would be helpful to mark down which words she has difficulty pronouncing. On the sheet, there are 3 columns for each of the 3 consecutive sessions in which she would be reading a passage. The passage Jessica is going to read today is called The Water Park Adventure. It is about a boy named Henry who is finally tall enough to ride the tallest water slide at the water park, and for this reason he is super excited for summertime. However, once he gets to the park, he becomes unsure about the water slide. With his dad's encouragement, he learns that even if something is new or scary, it pays off to give it a try. After reading the passage, Jessica will be provided with a list of 10 why questions. The directions on the worksheet read, answer the following questions. Underline the text evidence with the crayon color next to the question. This will help Jessica support her answer. A question example is, why did Henry feel unsure about the water slide when he was waiting in line? Since it is the first session, the SLP will likely have to help Jessica find this answer in the passage for her to underline with the purple crayon. The question is in multiple choice format and the answer options are A. The tube plummeted straight down the water slide. B. Henry heard the boy before him screaming. C. Henry's dad said, "Come on, son, you can do it." Or D. The water raced at Henry as he sat in the tube. The SLP would then determine if Jessica is able to select the correct answer of B based on her underlining in the passage.
For Objective 4.3, Jessica's caregivers will receive 3 educational brochures about dyslexia that are consistent with the client's improvement over the course of the semester. I would give Jessica's caregiver this packet of information about dyslexia that explains things that they can do at home to help Jessica.